Well, hello there, and welcome to the financial update here with First Community Bank. My name is Chase Clanton, your host, and I am joined today with Mark Holder, the senior loan officer out there at First Community Bank. Mark, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Good morning, Chase. Thanks for having me. It's a real honor.
Yeah, absolutely. Glad to have you here. And First Community Bank, quite a pillar in the community here. And, you know, and you're actually kind of new to town. Is that right?
I am. I'm still getting lost. Thank goodness for
Wow.
ways, you know. But, yeah, I've been here about 9 months and just love the community. And, you know, one of the things, and love First Community Bank, I won't be a complete walking advertisement, but one of the things that I really love is the awareness of First Community in the community. There's never any networking thing I go to, any function I go to where people don't know exactly who First Community Bank is.
That's exactly right. My Uncle Billy Clanton, who just passed away recently, he was famous for wearing a First Community Bank hat. He had that old FCB hat, and he wore it all the time. But, yeah, it's everybody knows First Community Bank. So we're glad to have you here, and I'd like to learn a little bit about your background, like maybe what initially led you to joining the banking career path and how you got to town.
Absolutely. Well, been a Tennessean most of my life. I was born in Chattanooga, moved to Oak Ridge, which is outside Knoxville. My dad worked for the not during the World War II effort when they had the Manhattan Project there, but the remnant of that, which is a national lab and a nuclear weapons facility. We moved there in the early 70s, and then I grew up in Oak Ridge. It was a great place to grow up. You know, a lot of... I lived in Atlanta for a short amount of time, and I'm a huge Vols fan, and I'll try not to point out the fact that we did win the national title in baseball.
We did. Hallelujah.
In case people don't know. But anyhow, when I lived in Atlanta, and they would give me a hard time from being a hick from Tennessee, and I would always tell people they built the atomic bomb in my hometown. What'd they do in yours? So it was a real neat community, and so I grew up in Oak Ridge. Won't go into ton of life story as far as that goes.
That's okay.
All good, but my mom, when I was a younger kid and then when I was in college, was a bank teller and had been a bank teller most of her career. So that's kind of how I got introduced to banking.
Right.
And then my dad had influenced me to, my dad was real engaged in my education, which I appreciate. I didn't always appreciate at the time, but I appreciate now.
Yeah.
And kind of led me to the direction of majoring in or pursuing a career in finance and accounting. And so when I graduated high school, I went to the University of Tennessee at Chattanooga. Wanted to get back close to where I was born, and still a big orange country down there.
Yeah.
And majored in accounting, got out of college, was dating my now wife at the time. We got married and moved to Atlanta for 5 or 6 years. I worked for a accounting firm which we provided audit and consulting services to banks in the Atlanta area. A lot of community banks, just like First Community Bank.
Sure.
And a lot of communities like Shelbyville that are probably not like that anymore as Atlanta's grown, but they were their own community, their own identity, a lot of farming, a lot of pride and those kind of things. So anyhow, did that for a while. Fast forward, you know, that kind of led me to have a passion for banking because I was working with banks to make sure everything was working the way they thought it should, and then learned the industry that way. And so did that for 5 or 6 years. Actually worked outside of banking for a couple of years, actually in Nashville at Shoney's headquarters off of Elm Hill Pike. And then got recruited by a bank in my hometown to come back and work there, and I spent 25 or 26 years there. I was chief financial officer for a while. I was a loan officer, ran the loan department, and became president actually a little bit before the pandemic, and did that for 3 or 4 years. And had been there 26 years and was a great place to work and great people. But my oldest son, I've got boys that are 26 and 21, had moved to Nashville. My wife's family's from Memphis.
Sure.
I was just looking for something different, and so I started looking for opportunities, and through the Tennessee Bankers Association got connected with Scott Kokenauer, and there was an opportunity with First Community Bank, and here I am. And First Community Bank's been a real blessing, just a great place to work, and very similar mission to the bank I came from in East Tennessee.
That is fantastic. I love your story. It's kind of like coming back to be with your family in a way too.
Absolutely.
Which that's a wonderful convenience, and well, I mean, it's community. You know, that works out really well. Now, after giving your background and everything like that, what's a piece of advice that you'd give a young person, or maybe even not so young, that's wanting to become a banker?
think I think a combination of it's desire. There's a metric or a philosophy I'd heard of as far as success in employment. Get it, want it, capacity to do it. Do you understand what the job is? Do you have a passion about doing it? And do you have the capacity to do it? I may have the passion to be a brain surgeon, but I don't have the capacity to be a brain surgeon. So do you understand what the job is? Does that make you passionate? And then do you have the skill set? That's the big picture. I think the things that will probably make any career successful, but the things particularly in banking that I think would, if these kind of things would fulfill you, I think it might be the career for you. Helping people. A lot of numbers, being acquainted with numbers and math, and it's not algebra, but it's, you're dealing with a lot of numbers, and a lot of analysis. Those are the kind of things, and in any career, I think you need a passion to learn. You got to be, learning has to excite you, and so those are the things I'd say would lead you to banking.
Those are the people that are successful in any industry or especially banking, production, anything like that. If you get excited by improving things and learning, that's a good sign, right?
Absolutely.
Well, that's fantastic. Well, let's talk about some of what you were wanting to come and talk about today. Some funding solutions for your business, and especially here in town, that'd be most useful for small businesses.
Absolutely. Well, at First Community Bank, that's a big portion of what we do. We're here to serve the community, which means we serve individuals as well as businesses, but a lot of what we do is work with small businesses. And so, one of the questions that might come in mind is, what are the opportunities to fund my business, and what does that look like, and what are the kind of factors we're going to consider? And what I'd suggest is maybe we start from the big picture of what's the perspective of a banker, and what are the funding alternatives out there for you? So it's not just banking. You can borrow money, but you can get money for your business other ways. You can, borrow money from a family member, or you can use money that you have personally. Maybe you had another career prior to that, so you can kind of self-fund your business.
Yeah, you've been able to save.
Absolutely, you've been able to save.
Been responsible.
You can get an investor or a partner in that business, and they can put money towards you expanding your business, or you can borrow money. So those are kind of the alternatives, and there's probably others, but those are the general ones you see.
Yeah, one that I remember coming up when I was studying entrepreneurship at MTSU as a minor, crowdfunding was a thing.
Yes.
So like Kickstart, GoFundMe, things like that. I don't know how successful you'd be unless you have a really interesting backstory. Maybe you've come from a tragedy or something like that, or it's something really interesting. I think that can be a little bit more challenging. So if you don't have an investor, you don't have money saved, it's best to educate yourself on these bank loans and maybe do that. Now, what are the primary challenges that small businesses encounter when they're trying to secure financing or funding?
I think one of the most common ones I see is a business owner doesn't have a good handle on how their business is doing financially.
Oh, yeah.
So they're not engaged. They understand the product, which is important. They understand the product or the service they provide. They're really good at that. I remember meeting with a great guy one time years ago in my career who had a machine business in East Tennessee, understood how to machine parts for light industry. But when I asked him, what's the difference between what you sell, or your selling price for this product, and how much it costs you to do, he couldn't answer the question.
Wow.
And I think that's so important. What's the market for what you do? How much can you get from your customers? How much does it cost you to make that? And how much is the overhead that covers that? Those are kind of questions that we're going to want to know. So I think that's the biggest thing we see.
Well, it'd be really important, especially if you're a small business owner or a manager that's been given a lot of control, to know the bottom line. To know exactly what you said, what you're putting in and what you're getting out. And then maybe what you owe somewhere in the middle. Shout out to Dr. Ralph from NTSU. he said it in that way. I might have twisted it around a bit. But I think it's also important from maybe even beyond a financial perspective, to be really to be objective about your business.
Absolutely.
You know, because that passion comes in like you're talking about. But if things aren't working, it doesn't necessarily mean you got to shut down, but something's got to change.
Absolutely.
And,
absolutely.
Yeah, so that's where it might be time to come see you and, let's say, invest in some new equipment that's going to be a game changer that you've been neglecting. I don't know. So what advices or strategies would you offer to some small business owner that's looking to overcome those challenges? You might have touched on that a bit already.
No, absolutely. I think, like you said, Chase, it's great advice from your professor in middle. Be objective. You know, I read a book one time, and I won't bore y'all with. I won't read the book to you, but it talked about the common denominator of businesses that had failed. These were big, huge companies over time.
Yeah.
A guy named Jim Collins wrote it, and the number one. And these were huge companies. Like there was a discount store called Ames back in the 70s and 80s that was bigger than Walmart, and Walmart succeeded and Ames went out of business.
Wow.
What was there that made them unsucceed? And there's financial reasons then they didn't succeed, but that's a result. What was the ingredient for that?
Right.
The number one ingredient for this guy's study, which covered several companies, was arrogance. And that really that leads to lack of objectivity. You know, when you're everybody's passionate about what they're good at. I actually heard Conan O'Brien from All Sources say this the other day. I thought it was pretty insightful that he was interviewing somebody, and he says, well, you must be obsessive about this. What I find is people that are good at something are obsessive about it. And so I think kind of circling back around, objectivity is important, and understanding what's financeable and what's not, and what's a banker going to be looking for. Maybe that's something that we could talk about that would be helpful. You know, we want to help you grow, expand your business. What's difficult for us to do is, I'm losing money, I'd like to add another participant to lose money with me.
Let's not do that.
So understanding your numbers, are you profitable? Can you afford this? We go on past history primarily. So if you've got a business that, well, I only did $200,000 this year in sales, but I really think I'm going to do better this year, I'm going to do $600,000, and if I do $600,000 in sales, that's going to be able to pay back this loan.
And so I'm going to go ahead and take it.
That's right, and I need a line of credit to pay payroll and those kind of things to get there because I'm hiring people and those kind of things. I'm not saying that's not doable, but that's a much more difficult situation than your example of, I've got this piece of equipment that's going to allow me to generate my product faster, quicker, and cheaper, but I've got to make the capital investment in it to do it. My existing cash flow stream can afford that.
That's the key.
Right.
That is the key. I need it, and I can afford it.
Well put.
Yeah, and if you're getting close and you need some financial help to fill that gap, and you know for sure this is going to create a situation for you where you can make the money to not only pay for it and maybe pay it off quickly, but make a profit, it's time to get that loan.
It's a great point.
Yeah. Folks, this is the Financial Update with First Community Bank, talking here with Mark Holder, the Senior Loan Officer. Producer Matt, let's take a short break, and we'll be right back.
Ladies and gentlemen, have you been looking for a way to support your local schools and organizations without dipping into your own pockets? Then listen up. Since 2017, First Community Bank has been donating 3 cents for every swipe made on an FCB debit card to teachers, classrooms, sports teams, and organizations of each customer's choice. Those swipes have added up to over $100,000, and it's so easy to get involved. Just use your First Community Bank debit card for everyday purchases and watch the donations roll in. Don't know how to set it up? Give us a call at 931-684-5800, and we'll help you get started. Let's make a difference, one swipe at a time. Also, don't forget about our Customer Appreciation event coming up at our Madison Street branch Friday, July 12th from 12 to 4 with ice cream provided by Joe Dean's Eats and Treats. Member FDIC, Equal Housing Lender.
And we're right back here with the Financial Update with First Community Bank. Again, folks, my name is Chase Clanton, your host, and I'm talking to Mark Holder, the Senior Loan Officer at First Community Bank. Mark, it's been a pleasure so far.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, and we still got more to go, so let's see what else we can learn in the next 10 minutes or so of our program. I really like this point that Kayla planned for us. She says something about success stories. Those are powerful. So could you tell us a success story of how business owners have grown their business and achieved success?
You know, there's a lot running through my mind. I can think of a customer here in Shelbyville we helped out recently, and maybe been longer than I want to believe because time flies by, but that leased their space. They had a small retail business, sell coffee here, and they were able to had the opportunity to buy their property and be property owners and have that money investment go to an asset they were building over time, and and they continue to thrive, and it was great to see. There's examples of businesses that I've had in my career where they're struggling.
Sure.
And you work with them, and generally speaking, I think with the community bank, and it's one of the things I'm appreciative about First Community Bank too, if somebody's willing to try, if a customer's got a problem and they're willing to try and work with us and make an effort, we're willing to help too. And when you see those folks turn things around, that's probably the most rewarding thing. I mean, it's got some stressful moments because we don't like to, we like to give it out and we like to get it back, right? You know what I mean? It's important for us, for our shareholders to collect the capital we loan out. But I think seeing those success stories that people make it, and then one of the things I love about this industry, and it's one thing I should have made the point of when we were talking about if you'd like to get into banking, which I'm sure we've got a job or two open, so if somebody here would like to,
it's a good plug,
hit us up.
Yeah.
Seeing all the different types of businesses and all the different ways people succeed and get fulfilled is really one of the most rewarding parts of the job.
So seeing like those situations turn around and people take the advice and really go with it.
Or can you take our advice, exactly, or come up with their own plan and say, hey, I'm struggling right now. If you can help me through this, I think I can turn this around. You know, that's great to see. It's great to see people who are always successful, but boy, it's great to see people who, you know, we all like Rocky, right? You know, we like the underdog.
Yeah, of course, yeah. That's fantastic. I can remember a short story about Clanton Paving Company. My dad and his brothers were in business, and they finally got to the point where they were doing so much work, and they were reluctant to take out a loan. And this goes back to equipment again. I think they needed a trencher, and it was going to be quite a bit of money, and they may have even needed more than one. But they finally bit the bullet, bought it with a loan, which could have been through you guys, I'm not sure. And that was the best decision they made because they're able to own the piece of equipment or the asset.
Right.
And they don't have to continue renting and renting and renting and renting. And I guess that's another thing too. Like if it's going to be more long term, you might want to consider getting a loan, buying whatever it is you need, and making it an asset.
Yeah, that's a great point. And you know, a lot of times people are rightfully concerned about how much interest they pay, and obviously we make, you know, that's how we make our living.
So we let's be honest.
On the one hand, but the other hand,
sure,
I get it. The thing I've always encouraged people to do, you know, look at how much, you know, you're going to be paying in this rate environment, which is a little high, 8.5% for most debt you borrow. If you can go out and sell your product, in your example, your family's paving business, if you can go out and make 25-30% return, and that trencher gets you more business and more sales, it more than pay. Normally speaking, the profits of a business more than pay the interest that's incurred, and it gets you there faster. And it's all about, you know, you put your foot on this pedal in a car and it gets you there faster. It's about balance. You don't want to go too fast or you get in trouble. You don't want to borrow too much money or you get in trouble.
Yeah, don't buy enough more than you can chew.
Oh, great point. Great point.
I'm full of crazy analogies, Mark.
Well, you're entertaining me with them then.
Well, hey, that's all good. So let's talk about maybe some perhaps some personal finance as well. Now, there are some key personal finance strategies that you should consider in the current economic climate. One is your debt. Could you share a little bit about that? Maybe your credit score as well?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, traditionally speaking, one of the things we look at, and pretty much on the consumer side, wherever you borrow money is probably going to look at this from we'll talk about credit score, the capacity of your debt to your income, and then how much we loan on different assets. Maybe those are the three things that seem to be most important for consumers. living within your means, not biting off too much that you can chew. I may Google that later to figure out where that came from. But typically speaking, banks, credit unions, finance companies, whoever, are going to look at your ratio of your loan payments to your income.
Okay.
So basically, how much of your monthly income is taken up by loan payments, how much by debt. Obviously, you don't want that number to be 100% because we all want to have air conditioning and all want to have something to eat and want to, we got some other expenses. So pretty much there's different levels, but 40 to 45% is the win point for that. So about a little less than 50% of your income is the maximum amount that would be for loan payments.
Did you say 50%?
Well, 40 to 45.
40 to 45.
Kind of rounding it off.
Gotcha.
50.
Gotcha.
Just like when you that's the maximum. Mm-hmm. I would encourage people to probably try to stay 30 to 35%. That probably allows you to live more comfortably. The big picture answer is living within your means.
Yes.
And so you don't, there's obviously car loans, credit card debt, and home loans. All of that's really expensive because not only are interest rates a little bit higher, but the assets you buy with that, cars are way more expensive than they used to be. Houses are way more expensive than they used to be.
Yeah. Let's think about the $80,000 trucks nowadays, right?
Isn't that crazy? I never bought an $80,000 house, but anyhow, I think living within your means and making sure your debt levels aren't too high. Mm-hmm. Credit score, we at First Community Bank look at and rely on credit scores. It's not the only factor we consider. If you've been a long-time customer with us and your credit score may not be up to our minimums, but you've handled your business with us.
That's the thing about a bank is they're able to see that.
Absolutely. So, usually credit scores in that 650, 660 range are the minimum for folks at banks. And then we're not going to loan 100% on what you're buying, typically. Usually with a car, you're going to want a 10 to 15% down payment. With a house, you're going to want a 20%, maybe 15% down payment. So just thinking through all those things when it comes time to go buy a house, or comes time to buy a car, does that fit into your budget? And understanding what the parameters are going to be.
Yeah, and this is where, again, that emotional or that passion will possibly get in the way because you really want blank.
Yeah.
Really, really want. And in a society that says, well, you should be able to get it, that can be a problem.
Absolutely.
Because you can always work up to it. Let's say you want that big house now. Well, it's okay. Let's start small. Let's get something that we can handle financially. And then, at least the way things are going now, that housing market continues to go up. So you're building an asset, you can sell it, and then you can afford something bigger.
Sure.
So let's get there. There's another point on here, the financial stress forecast.
Wow.
What do we know about that, Mark? Do you have a forecast? Is it going to rain tomorrow?
I'm pretty, I'm not good at that. I'm not good at a lot of things, but I'm definitely not good at that. This has been, I've been in banking or related to banking for about 30 years. This has been the strangest economy I've ever seen. And, everybody thinks the next problem will be just like the last problem. I heard somebody say that after the recession between 2008 and 2012. And, as a little part-time hobby, I keep up with the economy and read the Wall Street Journal and other exciting things like that. But I don't think last time's problem is this one. Last time's problem was an oversupply of housing. We've got the exact opposite issue now. So I don't know what it's... I think, and this is unfortunate, I think we're going to see, and I think we're already seeing it, the folks who financially are maybe in the lower middle class or upper lower class that have that, lower paying job, which says nothing about them as people. It's
correct. It's just the reality of their situation.
It's the reality of their situation. Obviously, with groceries costing more, car insurance costing more, rent costing more, those people are starting to struggle. So it's like the tale of two cities when it comes to the economy. I think the people that are doing well are doing better, and the people that are not on the edge are going to struggle, and that's sad. And I'm not here to throw out an answer as to how to solve it.
Yeah, and this is all like opinion driven with like an educational thought behind it.
Yeah.
This is not prophecy.
Right.
we don't have to say this will happen and these will be the signs. But it's interesting to get your perspective on that, because it seems like those who have are all good and they're getting more, and those who have not, you kind of have the haves and the have-nots in a way. So do everything you can to control your debt. And be realistic, and don't spend every penny.
Yeah.
There's another note about that on here. No frivolous spending.
Yeah, and do a budget, and a budget doesn't have to be something complicated and laborious. I mean, just on a piece of paper, here's how much I think I'm going to spend in utilities, here much I think I'm going to pay in groceries, and do I have enough to meet the goals? I think that's probably the most important thing people can do, and don't overthink it. Just make it work for you. It doesn't have to be the penny.
It doesn't, and you can start big, and by that I mean you can start really zoomed out and looking at the whole picture if you're doing a budget, which I would encourage everyone listening, especially if you're kind of struggling financially, to do that, because you'll start uncovering things that you didn't know.
Yeah.
As you make that budget, it's like, I did not realize I was going out to eat that much.
Absolutely. I didn't realize I had 3 gym memberships that I'd never go to. I mean, the streaming service.
Do I really need that?
Do I really need that? Because I think what you find is a lot of that stuff is overrated. Not to pick on Netflix and those kind of things, but when you realize if you don't have it, you didn't miss it.
Yeah. Well, and I think we are going to go just a hair over, which is great with me. I have one more point on here that I can't let you leave without asking you about. There's a point on here about spending too much on your house, and it leads into the question, what percentage of your pre-tax income should you spend on your home? Was that the 40 to 45%?
Yeah, most people will go 40 to 45%. And, everybody's probably experienced this, to go get pre-qualified for a house loan, and somebody say, you qualify for $12 million for a house.
Wow.
And it's a lot of money, and you're just shocked. Like, I could never pay that.
A little too good to be true.
I think I saw the other day, I don't know that they run these median numbers all the time for Shelbyville or Bedford County, but I think the average house price in Nashville was around $450,000 to $500,000. That's the average.
That feels right nowadays.
And then, I've got a friend that's a realtor in Williamson County, and the average price there is like $1 million, which is
That's Williamson County.
Yeah,
come on.
Yeah, exactly.
That's where your neighbor would have been George Jones.
That's right. Just don't give him the keys to the tractor. But
That's right.
But yeah, I think they're expensive. I feel for people. I moved here from Knoxville, sold the house for a number that I never thought I'd be able to sell it for, and then turned around and paid a lot for a house, and I thought I'd never spend that much. But I'm basically the same place, because what I feel for is young folks like you, Chase, who are maybe thinking about at some point buying a house. It's so expensive right now. I mean, a starter home's a $300,000 house, and that's just insanity.
It's wild. So, this isn't a real estate program, but what would just talk to me. I'm 24 years old. I don't have a family at this time. I'm technically single by law. I'm not married or anything, but definitely would want to move towards that in the future. What would your advice be to someone like me who has a goal of having a family and a wife and a home?
I would say establish your goals, even if you don't have a girlfriend. If I want a family at some point, what are my goals for them financially? So if a house is part of that equation, and talk to people you know and trust who've been through it, And one thing I love about, and I'm not trying to make this generational, but your generation's very intentional and asks great questions and is very interested in cultural issues. I think that's awesome. And my generation's a little more stoic. But I think figuring out what your long-term goals are, maybe even before you've hit that life stage, and then beginning to say, okay, if this is what I want to do, here's a sober reality of what it costs. I think it's almost like we probably ought to find friends in California and New York City who've been spending way bigger portions of their income on housing for decades.
Yeah,
it's come to the South, and I don't know what's going to happen. I don't think it's leaving. I think houses are going to be expensive for a while.
Period. Yeah.
So I think figuring out what your goals are and planning accordingly. It's probably still a good idea at some point to get in a house because it usually appreciates.
Sure. Unless there's some major disaster, which is always dangled over your head.
Absolutely.
Oh, you never know. Okay.
That's right.
But as a general rule, because there's a finite amount of land,
yes,
it's going to go up.
Yes, that's right.
Well, Mark, is there anything else that you want to touch on before we close out here?
You know, I can't think of anything. It was a real, I really appreciated being on today. Hopefully we've helped some folks, and I've got a face for radio, so it's great.
Well, it's a good thing we're
on TV. That's right.
It's a good thing we have a camera. We'll get a close-up next time.
That's right. That's right.
Well, folks, thank you so much. This has been the Financial Update with First Community Bank. My name is Chase Clanton, and I've been joined today by Mark Holder. We do want to remind you, please let us know your thoughts on the show here, if you will. Reach out to First Community Bank, or you could reach out to us here at the radio station. Our phone number, one of them anyway, you could reach us at is 931-684-1514. Let us know what you think of the show. Send us an email at WLIJ@gmail.com. What's some good contact information for the bank if they'd like to give some feedback?
Absolutely. Come see us at 207 Elm Street. That's our headquarters office. We've got branches on Madison Street and then also out on the airport off 231. I don't know those addresses. And then call us at 931-684-5800.
5800.
We'd love to hear from you, and we've got websites and all that kind of stuff, but we're still the kind of business where we'd like for you to call us on the phone and come see us in person.
And quite a nice digital sign out there on the 231 North location advertising this show of all things.
Absolutely.
So thank you all to that, because it's promotions on both sides that really help make this a success.
Local business, supporting local business, that's what it's all about.
First Community Bank.
Absolutely.
Well, folks, thank you so much for listening. Matt will send it back to regular programming.